Here we go, more. I just had a nap. People my age should have naps. During this slow recovery, I began to think about how to make a living. I had continued to work as a painter, doing odd jobs with John Tobin, but they barely paid the bills. I seemed to just be existing. Things would change one evening when I had dinner with my brother Peter and his wife Kathy. Peter owned a hardware store in Darien. Our mutual former partner, Bob Olson, had just taken on a new painting partner, and the first thing he did was to stop Bob from doing business with Peter. His name was Bobby Foltz. Rivalries. Bobby was in my youngest brother's class. Bobby didn't like Peter. Lots of fighting was going on. Wonder why people fight. He would back me financially, Peter, and set me up in Darien to become the painting contractor I had once been. He really made a lot of promises about a lot of money, but really didn't, though he had a property where it had been a former hardware store where we used to always go in, and it was owned by the woman who used to make sandwiches for us, Ida Valvala. Peter got into fights with her too about rent, and so he sued her. Then his youngest son, not his youngest, his third youngest, PJ, Peter Jr., went to law school in Pennsylvania, I believe Gettysburg. Oh, so Peter had a bunch of children, Peter and Kathy, and made them all kinds of things so he could rule the world. Not really. But it's quite funny. But it wasn't funny. Poor little PJ had been molested. Not good. Not good. Creates all kinds of situations. They had a child with their only daughter who was going to give up the child for adoption. And then suddenly, when she had the child, I think in Stanford Hospital, she changed her mind, and Peter flipped out, and Peter's very loving when it comes to children. So was my dad, so am I. And he, okay. And they decided to keep the child and let his second oldest son, Eric, who lives out in California, take the baby, and they raised the baby. And little the daughter of Peter and Kathy once said to me at a wedding, I don't know why my parents are so weird. They hide this from everybody. They don't want anybody to know that my brother really raised my baby, and we all are one big family, yeah. So, it's time to get all this stuff out, and I do name names. Why? Because if somebody wants to sue me, that'll really get this book moving, and I don't care if I win or lose. It don't matter. It don't matter, as long as it brings us all back together again. Won't that be fun? We can kiss and hug and throw the Christmas tree out of the house that Peter and Kathy own, just like the way our dad did when he got mad at my mother because she was a perfectionist and she wanted it turned a certain way, and he'd had it. He'd been smoking and drinking a little bit too much, picked the whole thing up and threw it out into the snow. We kiss. Whoa. So he wanted me to become that painting contractor to compete against them in Darien, the town. So he got me a phone number and everything, and all of a sudden, Painting by a Logan emerged. I'll read it. I exploded with work that summer, and I began to build a name that would eventually lead me to owning 4 vans and having up to 16 people working for me. I'm back in the saddle again. I would also find myself in trouble as I tried to get rich overnight. Many of my fundamental Christian rules would be thrown out as I ventured into this newfound freedom. Yeah, baby. I had been in a straitjacket for over 7 years, and I wanted to live again. This time I would not let guilt or anyone else rule me. Come on, Logan. Come on, baby. You can do it. You can do it. You can get set free and come up out of the grave, the graveyard of religion. Oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby. The love of money is the root of all evil. The love of money, not money. The love of money. With my paint crew rolling that summer of 1983, I bumped into an old friend from high school, Bruce Challenor. He lives down here in, down here in Port Charlotte. I occasionally talk to him. We used to have this little funny thing that we did. It started with me in seventh grade. Hello, we would add a ST, so I'll call him on the phone out of nowhere. Hello? And I go, hello. Now, most of our friends have died. Bill Lord died. Bobby Weir, he never did that. He was too above that. He really got whacked and crazy. I saw him at the 20th year high school reunion in Darien and Hindley on the elementary school. He didn't even recognize me. He didn't even know who I was. I said, Bobby. He goes, huh? Yeah. He'd been institutionalized in New York because he came from a lot of wealth and his mother took care of him. John Oakey was part of our group. John Oakey's own son murdered him. You can Google that. We'll not do that. Last time I saw him was at the 30-year high school reunion, and it was really strange. I mean, he was good looking. His father bought him a GTO in 1964. Hey, Logan, how are you? And the next thing I know, we're all sitting in the circle. I'll try to find that picture and put it in this book. All of a sudden, he goes, hey, Logan, look at Adams, the way he's dancing. He's dancing with his wife, Liz Horton, who was from Darien as well, the daughter of the Reverend Pete Horton. And still, 30 years later, John is looking at somebody and criticizing them for dancing. It's like, huh? And then, I hear about him going through this horrific murder where his own son went after him. John had become a prolific, really good claymation and pottery dude. Had a great living. And then what goes around comes around, I didn't really say it that way or mean it that way, but John had a mean streak. One time he almost tried to get me into a fight because Creighton Drury wanted me out of the Stokes. The Stokes was a gang that we had in 8th grade and 9th grade. And I had broken the rules when I took Creighton with me to Kerrville, Texas, to work on my grandparents' ranch. And all he did was torture me the whole time. And then, right before we were to leave, he put peroxide all over his hair and made me promise not to tell anybody. And I said, I'm not going to tell anybody. We get home, and he berated me, put me down, told everybody, that I was this, that, and the other thing. He was a really fun guy. Hey, you can look him up. I'll give you his phone number. His mother, apparently, under an anonymous name, and I remember this because Creighton was in my 4th grade class, was a writer. Her last name was Drury, Drury, but she made her name to be anonymous because nobody accepted a female writer back then. In fact, Creighton's father became the coach of the police Major League Baseball team, and I got to be on that. I was drafted onto that team because I became the only no-hitter Kiwanis Little League in the minors the year before in 5th grade. Then I was in 6th grade. And then I was in 7th grade and kind of got lost with Babe Ruth. Nobody was supporting me. So I said, F that. F again. Anyhow, I'm a Christian. Don't use F. The love of money is the root of all evil. With my paint crew rolling that summer of 1983, I bumped into an old friend. That would be Bruce Challoner. He flagged me down with another friend of mine, Bill Lord, who passed away. He flagged me down while I was driving through Darien, and as we got to talking, he told me that he had a mutual friend. He and a mutual friend, that Bill Lord, were in the midst of painting his wife's house. Mr. Friend had just married Mr. Friend. Guess I'm not naming names, but I am now. Sharon was her name. She was really wealthy. And Bruce had a tendency of, borrowing money at the lunchroom, never paying it back. Now he's got a really rich, very wealthy stockbroker. So, my friend, that would be Bruce, had just married a very successful stockbroker and wound up going from rags to riches. This guy always had been good at someone who would borrow a quarter. Here I am writing, telling you, changing things, which is good. Oh, I know the editor. She's good. She'll figure out how to make it really, really, really good. Had been someone who would borrow a quarter from you at lunch, promising to pay you back, only to borrow another quarter the next day. If he could not get it from you, he would move on to the next sucker, or female usually. Well, I had forgotten this characteristic and other traits as such, so I volunteered to give him a painting estimate, which I wound up giving it to her. I didn't know who she was. I didn't go to this wedding. They got married in very wealthy Talmadge Hill, New Canaan. He thought that would be great and suggested I set an appointment with his wife. I did just that as I watched my troubles just begin. One trait about myself that has always plagued me is when I want something, I do not bother to pause and ask questions. In my insecurity, I naturally want to appear impressive. Growing up in Darien, with all its money and prestige, where success was an Ivy League college degree and a six-figure income proved your worth, a guy who worked in the trades was looked down upon. I had been told by many a good-natured soul that I shouldn't think this way. But I still remember what it was like to answer a father's question about my future as I picked up his daughter for our first date. Well, son, it would go, where are you going to college? I'd reply, well, I'm not, sir. And then with a blank look, he would say, well, then what are you possibly going to do? And I'd say, paint houses, sir. And then the conversation would end. And so going out with his daughter might not happen again. Why are you going out with that guy? He's not going anywhere, Peggy. Why, Judy? Well, 'cause it's Judy's turn to cry, Judy's turn to cry, Judy's turn to cry. My insecurity had to be based on my father's mocking tone. My insecurity had to be based on my father's mocking tone when he would say to me, what do you want to do when you grow up? Dig ditches all your life like the Guineas? I grew up thinking that I was a working class failure in an upper class society. What was the difference? Painters got dirty. They worked with their hands. It did not matter that I was a successful businessman, which I didn't even believe that I was. I did not wear a three-piece suit when I went to work. I was a common worker. So this was the reason I walked into a trap set by my own making the day I met Sharon Challoner. And she didn't even take Bruce's last name. Oh, no. It was a common name. Poor Bruce grew up in the smallest house on the planet, down by a creek at the end of a pond. His mother liked me. And they had dogs, and I would sneeze all the time because I was asthmatic. I was allergic to dogs. I had heard that Sharon was doing some wheeling and dealing in the stock market. If there was a way to get involved with her, I was determined to find it. I acted like I knew everything about the investment world. I knew some good stuff. I offered to paint her house if she would take the money and open an account for me, because she had told me she kind of made this bargain with me. She could use the money to generate a fortune by buying me new offers that were being issued by her firm. Sharon countered that offer by suggesting that she funnel her money into my account. Ooh, that's really illegal. Do some buying and selling and leave me some of the profits. That sounded great to me, even though it had a ring of illegality. We struck a deal, but I didn't ask questions till later. I watched as soon thousands of dollars were generated in my account. Then it occurred to me that there would be tax liabilities. Ooh. I was told not to worry. Don't worry. Nah, don't worry. IRS. Who cares? IRS can't catch you. Oh, yeah. But I did worry. I worried every day. One day, as I was finishing painting her house, I heard her tell her husband that she needed to get her money out of all of the accounts. That sounded crazy to me, and I began to worry even more about my money. A few days later, a check arrived in the mail for $12,000. Shit. It was in my name. My worrying must have been in vain. I had painted her house for an estimate of $6,000. Now I got 12. Whoa! This was a healthy profit. I was on my way to becoming rich, like a man who won the lottery. I went out and bought a brand new car for my wife. Yeah, she came with me, a Chrysler in Richfield. It was a talking car. Iacocca had just become the president of Chrysler. He had been, I think, Ford. If anybody will remind me, I think he was the president of Ford at one time. Iacocca. A few days later, I received a call from Sharon asking if a check had come in the mail. I told her it did, and she asked me to send it to her. I told her that there was no longer a check, but there was a new car. Uh-oh. Everything blew up from there as I found myself calling my accountant to straighten it all out. He determined which taxes I owed and what Sharon owed. I wrote her a letter asking her to pay her share. Sharon sent me a check within a week, and not without some negative comments about my painting job. Now, my painting job's not good, right? Yeah, right. It was the best. I had a great reputation. I would later lose all my profits when I would be called by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Oh, jeez. The SEC. Uh-oh. To come to Washington to explain how all this money was made. Having hired a lawyer to retrace all that had happened, I reconstructed how I walked into this trap of greed. As we sat before government prosecutors, I realized that they were investigating a stock that Sharon's firm had traded. I just happened to be one of her clients, and they needed whatever information I could provide. They were amused by my story, but seemed to not give it too much weight. After paying this guy more than $1,000 that day, I think, for us to take the train to Washington, they were after bigger fish. I think I got fired because of my desire to get rich quick. It seems that I only learned the hard way. You do reap what you sow. My attempt to break out of the mold and become prosperous had not succeeded. I had not been struck by lightning for participating in this episode, or I had not been, and so I believe that this act of sin was more like an act of idiocy. I still believe that punishment came as a result of making wrong choices, yet as I was beginning to feel more freedom from the wrathful God image that gripped me. I was going through really changes. Who are you, Lord? I thought I knew you really well because I memorized the Bible, and I had so much scripture in my brain. I even began to use four-letter words again, not LOVE, but KCUF. And to my surprise, the ground did not swallow me up in fury. Whoa. That summer, I hosted a meeting with Dr. Bruce Morgan, and I invited a number of friends from the old fellowship. A few came, but did not care for his combining psychology with Christianity. That ain't supposed to work for fundamentalists. That combination did not fit spiritual warfare mentality that many of us were used to, and it was viewed as deceptive. That fascinated me. I could identify with what seemed to be a radical approach to Christian thinking. Not only did he use psychology in his teaching, but he brought mythology into the mix as well. Whoa. Bruce had also been labeled a rebel in his church. So this commonality brought about a new friendship that would last for years. The only problem now was that I had no desire to attend my formal church. Not at all. The few of us who identified with Bruce listened to his tapes, and we only saw each other every 6 months. That did not keep me in the spiritual framework I needed for fellowship, so I drifted back to the things I once knew. This kind of drifting is called backsliding, and the fear of it usually keeps Bible-believing Christians in line. I couldn't stay in line anymore. This was my destiny, and I would go wherever this destiny would lead me. A child is born. Happy is the man that has his quiver. Another child was born. I wonder who that was. If he's watching this, you'll know who you were. In the winter of 1984, I found myself doing very well financially. My brother Peter and I would go to lunch every day at one of the restaurants in Darien, spending the afternoon drinking beer. Peter could leave his store without a problem, and my crews were working. As brothers, we had a history of drinking and flirting with waitresses. Uh-oh. One afternoon, we went to a strip joint. Uh-oh. We did? We didn't get killed? Fire and wrath didn't come from heaven? I thought that maybe I had gone too far, but the alcohol helped me get over the guilt. That was the beginning of many more similar experiences. One afternoon, sitting in our favorite restaurant, I got a phone call from Kathy, his wife. Peter's wife. Kathy Peter's wife. Jackie was on the way to the hospital, about to give birth to our third child. We jumped in Peter's Corvette and raced up Route 7 at 90 miles an hour. It was insane. Drunk. To Danbury Hospital. Having just missed the birth, we later found out that my son, Timothy Michael Rogers, was born almost in the parking lot. Jackie's water broke while visiting her parents, and her father drove her the back roads to Danbury Hospital, hoping she would not have the baby in the car. In fact, he said to her when she was going, Dad, I'm going to have the baby. He said, close your legs. He knew. He'd been around babies being born because he flew for United Airlines, and he flew the P-51 Mustang just like my dad did in the war. Oh, man, Michael Boring and I had a lot of fun. My father-in-law playing golf and doing all kinds of things. And he liked to drink, and, well, he was retired. He didn't have to get sober again in between his flights. Now, they had to rush her inside as she almost delivered on the stretcher. I was now the father of a second son, completing a family of 3. The pressures of life would soon bring to bear some of the weaknesses that existed in my marriage, which outwardly seemed fine. I experienced nothing that would tell me something was wrong. When Jackie got out of the hospital and brought Timmy home the first night, I asked if she would mind my celebrating the new birth with my brothers in Darien, smoking cigars, and, She preferred that I not, but was unable to convince me not to go. I had to go over to her mother's to get Josh, and her mother felt I should take him if I was going to go to my brother's. Perhaps she wasn't happy that I wanted to be with my brothers and insisted that I take Josh, probably to curb my freedom. This was the first time I would see what struck me as meddling, and it would not be the last. I was probably very insensitive to Jackie's needs as a mother, but I was not about to let my mother-in-law, point this out. I had to live up to the image set by my father, the only image I understood at this time. And my mother-in-law's interfering combined with a dissatisfaction Jackie had in my lack of attentiveness as a father. Idiot, Logan, how insensitive. You should have been castrated at that point. And actually, I was. I had a vasectomy afterwards. No more children. Eventually, this exposed the crack in the foundation of my marriage. I was now questioning most of the orthodox evangelical roots that were my foundation. Jesus was still the rock, but the legalism that I had experienced left me cold. Jackie did not seem to share my dissatisfaction and was too busy with the kids to notice my growing restlessness. She were playing with the kids all the time. They became her husband. And I was so bad. I played tennis all the time. Didn't I, Rick Wilson? Why don't you sue me? But the legalism that I had experienced left me cold, and Jackie did not seem to share my dissatisfaction and was too busy with the kids to notice my growing restlessness. We were beginning to lead separate lives. She spent all her time with the kids, and I worked building up my business as I searched for my spiritual roots again. The spiritual roots began to fade as I started to withdraw from what I had known. My neurotic personality would soon find itself immersed in the passion of tennis. That was an outlet. I got to do something to get this energy out of me. The storm of life. In the whirlwind, not in the storm. In the spring of 1984, as the April showers poured, Bruce Morgan came to town with a new message. Bruce never sugarcoated his messages. He was realistic in his approach, as he often quoted M. Scott Peck's opening line of The Road Less Traveled, "Life is hard." This year's message would not be an exception. Many of us were disillusioned, and our spiritual journeys seemed to be going around in circles. With no support for our curious ventures in the church, we all kept our common threads alive through the tapes we received from Bruce. We looked to Bruce to make some sense of it all, and he usually did. This year's message was more of a confirmation of the chaotic condition everyone was in, rather than any new revelation. And his mentor, Wayne Monblow, was often on the radio preaching the same grace message, and occasionally Bruce's tapes as well. And my brother made that connection. Connection. Bruce's program began with a dream he had about 7 tornadoes in the violent dimension of God's creative power. One of the chaos of the universe came the cosmos. Out of the I'm reading too fast. Out of the chaos of the universe came the cosmos. Actually born in the mind of God through this intense struggle, Bruce dreamed that from the sky divine semen was raining down from on high, and he was able to show us that this had a biblical basis. The Hebrew language translates the word as having the same root as the word sperm. In the picture of a creative spoken power is likened to the conception process. This explained why many of us were going through such hard spiritual times. We were actually in a new creative period, and many of us were venturing into this violent aspect of God's chosen work. Like explorers into the unknown dark side of the Godhead, we, like sheep, were being led to slaughter. Before the night was over, this concept was illustrated to me in even more graphic terms. What happened next? That evening, we left the home meeting, driving Bruce and Trudy, his wife, back to where they were staying. As I pulled up to the red light, suddenly a car that looked like a traveling tornado smashed into me. My first thought was that this must be divine confirmation of Bruce's message I just heard, and also what God thought of the car I drove. Thank God no one was hurt. This was the car which had been purchased with the money obtained through the illegal stock deal. The image of a wrathful God was still with me. Once again, my first reaction was one of punishment. Although I could drive the car home that night and the insurance covered the damage, I could not shake the sense that this was caused by my actions. Bad boy, Logan. God loves you, but he's going to beat the crap out of you. Some say shit. Blaming myself was the negative thought process that was part of me, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not shake this fatalistic thinking. I was the master of my destiny as long as I followed certain principles that did not violate reaping and sowing. These principles were universal, and to disregard them meant to pay a great price. This ball and chain remained around my neck every time tragedy struck in my life, the weight constantly warning me to behave. Behave, behave, behave. Captain Kirk. I was unable to see God outside of this endless maze of fury. Time and more experience with amazing grace would help me break this oppressive cycle. Chapter 2, the day is long. Wrestling with God. I will not let you go until you bless me. From the scriptures, it says. Oh, Jesus is getting interesting. One day, the disciples of Jesus asked him why a man had been born blind. Was it because of his sin or was it because of his parents' sin? Jesus told them it was neither, but so God could show his good works. This paradox of strength found in weakness is what I could not answer in my own life. Did we have a sadistic God who allowed tragedy as a backdrop for heroic salvation? Why did I always think my tragic situations were a result of my bad behavior? Could I be satisfied with the mystery, never understanding why? Could I just accept life as it unfolded? These are the questions that I would pursue as I tried to find myself. In 1985, when Bruce came to town that spring, we went to the local pub after the meeting. I remember asking him why God had abandoned me. Why was I sent on this charismatic journey into the deliverance ministry and through the shepherding movement fiasco just to be dropped with no idea where to go? I was mad. Bruce helped me to see that it was all right to be mad at God. In fact, Jesus himself cried out to his Father, my God, why have you forsaken me?" If Jesus felt abandoned then my confusion was not too far off the mark. The more we talked, the angrier I was. Before I knew it, Bruce was encouraging me to scream out my frustrations, and I was drunk. I had to be a bit reserved since we were in a pub, but I was amazed that this experience did not cause an earthquake. Actually, it was very liberating. Imagine yelling at God and not being instantly destroyed. It was like a rite of passage wherein I suddenly became a man. I faced the fear. I faced the fear of my father slapping me down for my insolence, and in so doing, I felt a sense of freedom. It was a bonding experience with God, the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, that's Jesus, El Shaddai, El Elyon, lots of different names for God, not just God. And that's not a name either. That's just a German perverted name that we've all come to know. I don't even like the sound of God. Yeshua. How about Yahweh? We had lots of laughs that night. Later, Bruce went back to the inn where he was staying, where we were paying for it because um, we were hosting him, and accidentally he set off the alarm in his van. Trudy woke up thinking that someone was breaking into their van. Now I remember that. That was funny. Into their van and called out for Bruce, only to find that he was the culprit. We had many years of laughter, remembering the night I had learned to express my real feeling toward God. Another trial would visit me one more time before the year was out. I had a compulsive desire to change the front porch entrance of my house. I say compulsive because I thought the flagstone should be replaced by brick to give it a warmer look. Comparing my house improvement capabilities to my brothers, who, like my father, constantly improved their homes, I thought I should do something that proved I could do the same kind of work and they wouldn't make fun of me. So one of those days when I felt guilty enough, I decided to embark on this project. I mixed the cement, poured it into the position, and I put each brick in its place. As I moved toward the back row, I braced myself with one hand against the house while the other placed the bricks. As I got to the glass storm door, I put my hand on the the glass, braced my weight, and went right through the glass. It was like a jagged razor as it cut nerves, tendons, and a small artery. I rapidly lost blood as I grasped one hand over the wound, praying that I would not die. A night in the hospital and months of new questions became my focus as I tried to make sense of this new challenge. I'm going to go now because I gotta pee bad. Does anybody want to listen to that? Page 50. I'll be back. Bye bye. Happy trails to you. I met a man named Rungle.